Michael Boyle's StrengthCoach.com presents the Strength Coach Podcast, brought to you by Perform Better, the experts in functional training and rehabilitation. PerformBetter.com.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 350 of the Strength Coach Podcast, brought to you by Perform Better, the experts in functional training and rehabilitation. PerformBetter.com. I'm your host, Anthony Renda. The show notes are located at my site, ContinueFit.com or StrengthCoachPodcast.com. All right, today on the StrengthCoach.com and NBSC.TV Coach's Corner, spoke with Coach Boyle about 2022, some transitions and what he calls a year of back to normal. Talked about his article, Feed the Cats for Hockey. What is Feed the Cats? Can we just call it working on strengths? How does he look at it? And he's going to talk about some new stuff that he's getting in relationship to speed from Alex Natera and Cam Josse. And don't forget, guys, we did a special interview called 40 Mistakes, 40 Years. You can get that at StrengthCoachPodcast.com when you sign up to the newsletter. For the Hit the Gym with the Strength Coach segment, brought to you by Athletic Greens, 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens. They're going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. Check it out at athleticgreens.com/strengthcoach. Today we have on Megan Pomarensky, and she is a certified athletic therapist, certified functional strength coach, and a certified vinyasa yoga instructor with a master's degree in rehabilitation science. She is an internationally published academic author, public speaker, and educator. She's going to talk all today about chronic pain, the difference between the biomedical and biopsychosocial models, why we need to move to the biopsychosocial model, and how it influences the outcomes, how not to look at all the things that are wrong and to start looking at all the things that are right, and how we can work on things that we feel are wrong in our assessments or whatever, but focusing on the language and external cueing. Something she calls wear and repair, injury mitigation, and training in vulnerable positions, which can be a little controversial, so I wanted her to expand on that. Talked about high-intensity ISOs, her article, Feeling Tight versus Being Tight, and her article, The Art of Accountability. So much more coming up from Megan in a little bit. For the KISS Marketing Business Secrets for Gym Owners segment with Vince Gabriel, Vince is going to go over the most game-changing marketing idea he ever used. Really cool. Not just the idea, but how he followed up with this idea. So KISS Marketing is a digital marketing agency that helps fitness business owners make the big bucks from the marketing without feeling stupid, stressed, or wasting valuable time figuring out on your own. If you need some help with your marketing, head over to kissmarketing.net to book a free coaching call with Will Matheson, Vince Gabriel's secret marketing weapon. For the Getting Started with VBT or Velocity-Based Training segment, brought to you by Perch. Perch is a 3D camera-based weight room technology solution bringing VBT into the 21st century. This is their last week, their last segment. Nick is going to speak about the future of VBT. I hope you guys got a lot out of this, learned a lot. I think Nika did a great job with this segment. I really appreciate Perch for coming on and doing it. Again, we have a new segment. Nomly is sponsoring the Maximizing the Member Experience with Sumit Seth. And Nomly helps you build relationships through personalized communication so your members stay longer and pay longer. Go to Nomly.com, NAAMLY.com. You can schedule a demo to get a feel for what it's all about. Use the referral code StrengthCoach to get started on a free 30-day trial. All right, today Sumit's going to talk. He continues his 3-part series breaking down the different components of staging the memorable experience. Today he talks about positive and negative cues and how you can identify them to help you create a more memorable experience. All right, guys. The Perform Better holiday sale, it's been extended to January 3rd. You have time, 40% off racks, benches, bands, sandbags, cleaning supplies, you name it, they got it. Check it out at PerformBetter.com. Don't forget the one-day seminars are back starting January 14th in Fair Lawn, New Jersey. They're also going to be in Austin, LA, Chicago, and Boston. Check it all out at PerformBetter.com. Lots of things to get to, so let's get on the phone with Coach Boyle. All right, now it's time for the StrengthCoach.com and NBSC.TV Coaches Corner with Coach Boyle. You can try the new StrengthCoach.com out for 7 days for free. Totally new format, user-friendly, same great forum. As always, it's a place where top coaches in the industry come to connect and learn. Coach, how you doing? Happy Christmas.
Happy Christmas, Ant. I'm doing great. Enjoying.
Right.
It's like kind of a nice slow week. We don't have any no athlete groups in the afternoon, so it's just sort of a like pretty quiet. Go in a little bit, 10 to 12-ish, and come on.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. I think too this year. Wow. I mean, leading up to Christmas, the Midwest at least, and I know you guys got pretty cold too, but we were below sub-freezing, lots of snow just north of us where Michaela was. She was late, didn't get in until Christmas at 5, right? People's flights everywhere getting canceled. What a disaster with Southwest. But it seems super quiet, like more quiet right now. I'm at the co-hatch space, my co-working space. Man, it is it's a little weird that I don't know. Maybe it's the new thing.
I don't think so. I think things will crank right back up again after New Year's, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's nice. I'm getting much better. I'm getting much more comfortable with slow weeks. My doctor, personal training client who I go in with in the morning has been gone all week. So I haven't been in there at 5:30 in the morning or at 6 o'clock in the morning or whatever. And we don't have kids groups in the afternoon. The kids are off from school. So today we lifted at 11. So it's just it's a nice, it's a nice pace. I like this. I'm not quite retired yet, but I'm going to adapt very, very well to being like a 4-hour day guy.
Yeah, well, you know what? Let's kind of talk about this because I was just saying to you, this has been a big year for you, like a big kind of life-changing year. Your longtime partner, Bob Hansen, he left you, amicably. Everything was great. And, bought out by some of your longtime and best employees, which is amazing. Your daughter graduated college and now she's playing pro hockey in Buffalo. Marky committed to a college. She's going to be playing lacrosse there. Lots of crazy stuff. You've been on a quest to learn how Zone 2 can help yourself and hopefully your athletes as well. But, because obviously, you're getting older. So this has definitely been an interesting year for you.
Yes, it has been an interesting year. And I guess more from a personal sense. I think sometimes it's some of the other years where it's like, oh, you spoke here, you went to China, or you did this, or you did that. And it's not been that way. It's been, I think, a very family focused year. We had Mark had an ACL injury. We get him back rehab. He's playing. He commits to college. Now we start looking at empty nesters. So come September, we're not here. There's a chance Michaela's talking about moving. She'll either live in Buffalo or live in Minnesota. I don't know. There's all these things that are going on that are, as you said, life-changing. So, but life-changing in a good way. Cindy and I are starting to figure out, okay, what do we want to do? We're starting to figure out what the direction of the business will be now that Kevin and Steve and Vinny and Dan are involved. And I'm very happily letting them do more and more. And Carrie's been great. Carrie Burns, who works with us, has been awesome in terms of making this transition really smooth. So it's been a big year, and it's pretty much been an all good year.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. We don't really talk about Carrie a lot on here. Obviously, it might be about Bob or the business, but especially when something like this happens, like when Bob left, and now you have a big transition. Carrie is really that kind of middle person. She's just a great liaison who's been working with you and Bob on a certain level for all these years, and working with Kevin and the boys on a certain level for all these years. And now she's probably making that transition so much easier for everybody.
Oh, yeah. She's honestly, I've said this, I don't think I've ever said it on the podcast, but she was an absolute godsend. A friend of mine said, I have a friend who's looking for a job, mother's hours kind of deal. And I didn't know her at all, even though we'd kind of traveled in the same circles. Our kids had kind of played hockey. They were a little bit different in age. Mark played with her youngest boy for either for a year or for 2 years, but I didn't know her well. And she has just been so good. She's got a great business background because she was involved in a couple of companies prior, kind of to her kids getting older and getting into school. And she, more importantly, she has a really good business head. Like she understands me. She understands how I want things to be. And she's really good at implementing that stuff. So yeah, we're lucky. And I mean, honestly, Steve and Kevin and Dan and those guys, Vinny, they're lucky that she's there because she really has helped us to make a relatively seamless transition. I mean, it's hard. With the problem with Bob is you lose so much knowledge and experience just in terms of, he kind of knows where all the bodies are buried. He knows everything, that every little thing, what about this? What about that? Like all the things that I just didn't concern myself with, Bob concerned himself with. And so Bob's been really good too, in terms of helping those guys and kind of being that a little bit of a human Rolodex to be able to help them make that transition and figure out, well, who do we call if this happens? And who do we call if that happens? We're slowly getting a list of things put together that probably about 80% of which was in Bob's head.
Look, I know what you mean. I know I working in the bar business a long time ago. When I was a bar back, they would be like, the owners would, and the managers would be like, "Ant, where's this? Ant, do we have any of this? Ant, do we have that?" Like I was the one, because I'm the one getting dirty downstairs and knew the whole layout and knew who to call for this and knew who to call for that. Because when you're at that level even. And so can you tell us, so just so everybody knows, what is Carrie's role? Like what was she hired as? What is her role?
Her role really was a little bit undefined when she started. And it really has become a little bit of everything in terms of, I always say she's my boss, so she keeps me in line. But has been really good about, allowing Bob to kind of offload some tasks in terms of just the general administrative stuff in terms of running the building. She's been good with helping us in terms of transitioning over to a little bit more kind of a software oriented program where we were able to get all of our adult clients, there was a lot of people kind of walking in, paying by check, paying monthly. We got a sign up system in place. So she's just a really good business ops person. She gets it. And she gets the customer service side. She gets the people side. She gets the staff relationship side. So she's one of those people, if you said, what's her title? I don't know. I told her on her business card, she should have Mike Boyle's boss put on her business card. But
yeah. Sounds like 20th century operation manager, maybe. Getting them into the 20s.
That's what I mean. To have somebody kind of fall into your lap who has some business experience and some business savvy and a real customer service orientation. We've been really lucky, truthfully.
Yeah, very cool. Mike, what would you say, again, lately we've been talking a lot about Zone 2. So what would you say this year was kind of, the overarching theme of when you look back and you think, wow, yeah, because I know you learned a ton about the Zone 2 stuff. And I don't know if I'm not remembering earlier in the year, because really been like the last 4 or 5 months.
It was last 3 months.
3 months. Okay.
I really started it in October.
Yeah.
So that's only been kind of the last quarter of the year. And honestly, I think prior to that, I would call it the return to business as usual. And that's really what had happened, where we were kind of like, all right, we're not doing this because of COVID anymore. What are we doing with, we're keeping the pods, but we're going to let people wander around a little more than they were before. We're not going to be yapping at people about getting your own space. And there was just this nice return to normalcy there with people. There was this steady stream of people showing back up at the facility and thinking, wow, I haven't seen you. And some people would be like, yeah, I haven't seen me in 2 years. I haven't been here for 2 years. I think our COVID phobics came back. People, there was some people who were coming for a while with masks on who aren't masked anymore. So I really think that was a huge part of this year, was just getting back to normal, getting back to the way that we like it. And I just love the fact, and it's one of the things that you realize and with the transition that we're making in the business, how familial it is, how family oriented it is, how comfortable the staff and the clients and people are. I just love that. Like today I was in there because we had people, Dane DeLegro, who played the Predator in the Prey movie. That has been one of our clients for a really long time and decided to go out and become a monster actor. But he was back this week, just kind of, stopping in to work out. I love the fact that people find it a place to come back to. We actually, Becca Cardin, one of our former interns, came back with a completely different, like a short, spiky, blonde streaked hairdo. I didn't even recognize her. And I introduced myself to her, and she was so polite. She played it off like, yeah, I interned here with Christina Jennings, that crew a couple of years ago. I didn't even know it was her.
Wow.
But people like that coming back. So there's this constant theme, I think, in our place right now of people coming back, which I love.
Yeah, it's cool. And once you leave, like all the people that don't like you are going to come back because they love Kevin and Vinny and all those guys.
Exactly,
So.
yeah.
Coach, let's move on to Feed the Cats for hockey. Feed the Cats for hockey, which I feel like it should be called Feed the Cats for college hockey, because you did talk a lot about the college hockey schedule. But you started the article off this. What does Feed the Cats mean?
Feed the Cats means prioritizing speed and power. That's what it really means. But it's based on this idea, and it's a Tony Holler thing, but Tony described sprinters as cats. Really fast, really powerful, really explosive, really lazy. They sleep most of the day. But when it comes time to sprint, they're the fastest sprinters. The cheetahs and lions and the leopards and those kinds of people. And his whole idea was that what we need to do is feed the cats. And I always talked about, like in hockey, it was kind of flog the cats. You'd recruit cats, and then you'd basically try to beat them into submission with up and back, the Herb Brooks miracle skating again. And so Tony wrote a really good Feed the Cats for basketball article, and I kind of piggybacked off of that. I got that article from him. I looked at it. I said, I really need to try to express this more to the hockey world. And you're right, definitely more to the college hockey world, I think, because the pros are going to be playing more games. But I do think that the concept, I actually talked a little bit about it with Mike Sullivan, the Penguins coach, because he's one of my former players, because I'd sent it to him. I sent it to a bunch of guys first just to see, did people think I was off base? And no one, interestingly, thought I was off base. Everybody was like, yep, Devin, Kevin Yield, all these guys, that I sent it to, all thought. And because I was a little bit nervous about it in terms of, it's a little bit contradictory, because even though I'd said we were doing this in the 90s, we still did some 5-mile runs. We still ran 4 miles on a Thursday. We still did some, but in this cross-pollinating thoughts here, but our running then was definitely not zone 2 running. Our running was threshold running. In terms of, no matter what we went out to do from a running standpoint, no one was ever comfortable. Everybody was always trying to beat somebody else. And I think transitioning out of the Feed the Cats idea, but that's the crazy part about the zone 2 thing, is that you're in this sort of opposite mode of, even yesterday, I really struggled yesterday to keep my heart rate down. I kept looking up and I was 77%, 142, 143. But I felt comfortable. I felt like I felt on every other ride, but for whatever reason, I just kept creeping up out of that zone. And so you're trying to keep it down. So it's this sort of competition of who can do the best job of not getting out of there, whatever their heart rate zone is. And as you said, I've learned a lot. And what I've learned a lot is that there's absolutely positively no consensus on what this even is.
Yeah.
And particularly, we're taking, much like we've done with, say, American football and strength and conditioning, we're taking what's probably primarily a cycling concept for serious cyclers and then trying to apply it into more of a general fitness setting. I actually watched Charlie Weingraf had a little video today on Instagram. And when people talk about, millimoles of lactate, I'm like, you can't, like, with people, I'm like, get relevant, please. People are not going to be buying lactate testers and pricking their fingers. And I mean, that's a very, very small percentage of the population who are going to be doing that. So I do think this kind of heart rate guided, talk test guided, whatever, 72 to 75% type stuff is where it's at. I also don't honestly know. It's interesting because my HRV, as I said, seems to be slowly getting better from at least, from my 8 sleep numbers. And my resting heart rate may be sliding down a little bit. I'm not seeing consistent 40, something reading, seeing a lot of 50, 52, which, kind of where I've been before. But interestingly enough, I've been riding a lot with Joe Squazzaro that works with us. He's become kind of my accountability partner. And we did 2 miles the other day for time, and my time was almost dead on with a time February of last year. So effectively 11 months ago, same exact time, same exact 1 minute recovery, same exact 2 minute recovery. So I do think for all of those people who are trying to tell us that, it's going to really change performance, it's going to really enhance recovery, in the hard stuff, I'm still not seeing that.
Yeah, I think also.
I do think, but I'm sleeping better, no question. Yeah. The other day, I think I slept 8 hours the other day, which I haven't done in a really long time. Slept from 11 to 7. So the good thing, and this is why I think the non-performance people who listen to this podcast, this is a really good thing. I'm not sure that it's bad for performance, but I am really sure that the other quote unquote benefits are going to be worth it in terms of maybe lowering resting heart rate, definitely raising HRV, improving the quality of your sleep. And then I'm going to go one more round with blood markers to see, because it's a little bit mixed up because I've introduced a statin and then a higher dose of the statin. So it's harder to see. My blood glucose was better, but I remember I told you blood glucose, I didn't fast the last time I did it. So that isn't a great indicator. And this time around, I had A1C done for the first time ever. And of course, A1C puts me in the pre-diabetic category, but that's over the last 3 months. That's, I guess, how the A1C reading works. I'd say it's a little bit of a 50-50 split, but I think the 50 positive, the other stuff isn't really negative.
Yeah, and I think that's the confusing part for a lot of us is, it's not just in the performance world that people are talking about this. So we're kind of getting it from all these, Attia and Huberman and all these people, and then, it's carrying over into the sports performance world, and so people are like, "Well, we got to do that too," and it's still a good thing, but we just don't know if it's helping with performance, like you said. And who knows? You can't go by you. You're 63 years old. It's hard to say if a 22-year-old did this, would it be better?
Right, and that's why Joe is great, because Joe. I don't think Joe's probably 26 or 27. So it'll be interesting to see. I don't know if he has been monitoring his resting heart rate, but it'll be interesting to see what's happening kind of on his side.
Yeah.
But it's, in any case, as I said, I would bet we probably have as many people in the fitness world listen to this podcast as we do in the sports performance world. Maybe more.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's why I think all this Zone 2 talk really helps, because I do think getting your clients to do more, I would say, low to moderate intensity aerobic work is probably going to be a net positive for everybody.
Absolutely. Mike, can we stay back on the feed the cats? You said it's speed and power, but can we just really call it? Is it also working on strengths or things that we know are really going to move the needle? So, for example, it could be something. Feed the cats if for an endurance athlete, could mean something else, right? I mean, I feel like it's work on the strengths.
I think feed the cats for an endurance athlete still means going to sort of an under distance type of training. Less is more. And I think that's really when you kind of break down the feed the cats to its simplest parts. It's a less is more kind of philosophy. It's let's do some really hard stuff fast and then get out. And the great thing about it, is that it really fits in with what we're doing from a sports performance standpoint. So even for us today, we went in with Mark and his friends, and we did our dynamic warm up, and we did some plyos, and we did some med balls, and then we ran some sled sprints, and then we did a quick lift, and we were out of there. It very much lends itself to the sports performance world. And I think the biggest thing is just Feed the Cats has come to be symbolic of sprinting. And in sprinting, it's sort of like, I think Tony is the champion, the father of the whole Fly 10 idea, because I think Tony popularized this idea of Fly 10 and the idea of looking at, miles per hour that people are running. And the idea, honestly, of really knowing what your athlete's speeds were. Because so much of what Tony did with, I think Record Rank Publish might have been the first article. I'm not sure what the chronology of the articles were, whether there was kind of an intro to Feed the Cats article before Record Rank Publish, or whether he introduced the Feed the Cats idea within Record Rank Publish. But it's just this idea of testing the things that you want to improve, and of looking at the tests as training. And that's one of the things I wrote when I wrote that series of articles for strengthcoach.com. I said, it's looking at the idea of sprinting as a training tool versus as a test. I think in the past, what we did, in kind of inadvertently, is we periodically tested speed to see if what we were doing was, as you said, moving the needle. Is the training, is the lifting, is the jumping, is that making people faster? And we never looked at the simplistic kind of said principle idea of, well, if we want to get faster, probably the best thing we can do is to run fast. And that's why, if you said, like, when we talk about what's the last year representative of, and I said the last year was representative of, return to normal. But if you said, hey, well, what's the last 4 years been representative of? I'd go back because it probably was 4 years ago that Tony came out now, maybe 3. But it was that Feed the Cats idea. It was us saying, hey, we're really going to prioritize speed, and we're really going to prioritize sprinting. And now I just read Cam Josse, who you got to get Cam on the podcast. He's actually going to Auburn from Indiana.
Oh, wow.
But he was introducing some concepts from a resisted sprinting standpoint, and basically saying that there seems to be, as the research develops, that there may be some call for even heavier resisted sprinting. So that was one of the things that we did today, is we went a little bit heavier than we had normally. And we're going to go heavier again, probably next week on one of the days. We'll push it even a little bit more in terms of percentage. We were up, we're still playing with the idea of being under 2 seconds for a Fly 10. And he was saying that he thinks, and we're going to look and see, that you could probably be under 3 seconds, so that the loads could be heavier and that you'd really be working on that horizontal force production. So it's, I love it. I love this stuff because I think that it allows you to just continue to move forward. There's people constantly saying, hey, I got another idea. And I love when somebody says, I got another idea, because then I get excited and think, okay, I'm going to try that. I'll give you one more. And I know we're probably going to be over, but Alex Natera just had a post, which for some reason on his Instagram, he might be doing it deliberately, but it doesn't allow it to be reposted. But he was talking about band assisted jumps, and how what he did, much like what he did with the unilateral stuff, is he did band assisted jumps off of his force plates with different size bands. So, like the if you look at like the Perform Better band, there's probably like a 1 1/4 and a 2 and a 2 1/2 or whatever it is. And basically what he had said was that the bigger the band, the higher the ground reaction force was, because what you realize is the band is helping you get higher, but it's not helping you to decelerate. So that was another whole thing of, oh, wow, now the size of the band matters when you start doing the band assisted jump, which we hadn't, all of us, it was funny, Kevin Carr and Pat Stefanski and I all had the same thought of like, wow, we hadn't thought about that. We hadn't even thought about, it definitely feels different with different bands, but we just hadn't thought about the fact that basically the higher you get, the greater the landing forces are going to be, which afterwards it's like, duh, of course, that's what would happen. But I think we were looking at it as sort of an unweighting technique to get people to be more bouncy and more explosive, and not looking at the secondary part, and probably the more important secondary part of getting really big eccentric braking forces. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I know Lance Walker and Les Spellman. I think Les has a new product out even that they're talking about working on some of the deceleration, that deceleration piece as well as important as it is.
Just read it. Joey Gerasio just did a nice article too for Simply Faster on deceleration stuff. And I think that's another area that you're going to see. It's just good. I think there's some really good stuff going on in the performance space, and some really good people who are doing some really good thinking.
Mike, I do want to ask one more question, because you were talking about, when you wrote this and you called a couple of your guys, the Feed the Cats article, and you called a couple of your guys because, wanted to make sure it was historically accurate, because you said you were doing some longer distance stuff, some of the running. Was it just, at that time, were you feeling like afraid to let go of some of these, maybe, the stuff you learned from the best coaches in the world, and that's the way maybe some of them were doing it? Was it, because I think there's a lot of coaches out there now that feel like it's hard to let go of some of these concepts, if you don't have your own little lab or a way to test some of this stuff. You feel like that's what was going on then?
That part didn't really bother me. The thing that I was worried about was that I was running so far kind of afoul or away from what the NHL teams, like I really was a hard sell for me with the players, because players would come back and say, they really want me to get my VO2 max up. And I literally, I remember saying this to Mike Sullivan and Tommy Poti and Joe Sacco and a lot of these guys. I was like, I'm telling you, I used to tell the guys all the time, just go in and take the heat the first day of testing about your VO2 being low. Because we would get it all the time. All of our fast guys, Sean McGeckran, Mike Sullivan, Joe Sacco, they would always get the heat from the NHL team about, your VO2 was 50 or 52 or whatever it was. And, so-and-so had a 60. And our guys would always think, yeah, but he's slow as shit. But the teams loved the VO2 max score. And I think that was the bigger concern for me, was trying to sell the guys on this. It's trying to sell them on the fact that I think I'm right. I really believe that I was right. And I think over time it proved out, because I would say there are more people training the way that Mike Boyle trained in the 90s than there are people following the old NHL idea of get on the Fitron bike 45 minutes 5 times a week, and that's lower body work, and try to get your VO2 to 65 or 6 or 7 or whatever it was. And I think there were some guys who listened, who had really good careers, and there were other guys who didn't listen. And some of those guys trained themselves out of the league because the only reason they were close is because they were fast. And that's where, people still, the whatever Steve Magnus of the world will always say, you don't get slow from training slow. I'm not sure that my experience tells me that that's true. I do think that people who are repetitively doing things slowly will lose neurological efficiency. And it goes back kind of to the Charlie Francis idea. And I know there are people who vigorously agree with me, and I know there are people who vigorously disagree with me. But I can only go back to what I experienced during that time. And we had some guys with, I would say, very average VO2s have way above average careers, particularly based on what they were predicted to have. If someone would have said that, Mike Sullivan's the biggest example. If someone had said, Mike Sullivan will be the second fastest man in the NHL for a couple of years, no one who watched the BU game would have said that was possible.
Wow.
He's a good skater. He's not the second fastest guy in the NHL. He's just a good skater.
McEachran was up there too. I remember him.
McEachran was the fastest skater on every team he was ever on. He won when they did those fastest skater competitions. He won them all every single time. But he looked faster than Sully. Sully was the guy who never looked, and that's where I always say to people too, and I said that in the article, the eye test is not very effective, particularly in hockey, because you've got the longer force production time. And so guys who can really efficiently cut ice don't look as fast. Eichel's like that. Like you watch Eichel and it's so smooth that you don't realize how fast he's going until you see him get away from somebody, because it's not choppy. It's not short strides. It's like whoosh, it's just this beautiful shaving of ice and it's a unique skill, but strangely enough, one of the fastest guys we've ever had on land was also Jack Eichel.
Wow.
Of 0.96 or something, 0.95, fly 10. And we haven't had a whole lot of people go under 1. But Jack was one of those. And Miles Wood, who plays for the Devils, another guy who's gone sub 1, those guys. And Miles looks like he's going 100 miles an hour, and Jack looks like he's going 50. And they're both going about the same speed.
And Jack's kind of like a freak athlete anyway, freak of nature. I mean,
so is Miles. They're similar in terms of both, high, 34, 35, 36-inch vertical jump, really strong, super fast. We don't get that. We don't get as many of the freak athletes in soccer in America. I think they do get more in Canada, just because in Canada it's the first choice sport. I don't think it always is in America.
Yeah. All right, good stuff, Coach. We'll leave you on that. Have a happy New Year. Thanks for doing this, and we'll talk to you next time.
It is always a pleasure. I could do it all day.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to Business Secrets for Gym Owners. This is Vince Gabriel, and today I'm going to talk to you about the most game-changing marketing idea that I've ever used in my entire life. And it reminded me to talk about this today because I saw there's a guy on Instagram, and he was giving away a home gym set. And basically, it was like a barbell, plates, and like a rack or something like that. And he was like, I'm giving it away, and here's what you got to do to try and win it. And he gave the instructions to try and win it. And it's like, oh, he's running what's called a sweepstakes, if you will. And I've been seeing a lot of people doing this recently. And back in this is how long ago I did it. Back in 2016, we ran something like this at my gym, and we gave away 4 6-week training packages, personal training. They got the kitchen sink, right? They got nutrition coaching, they got personal training, they got everything. And we gave it away to four winners. And what we did was we followed them for 6 weeks, and we created a documentary out of it. And so we had all this content from all the people when they were on this journey, almost think like Biggest Loser. And we were following them the whole time on social and taking their stories and putting it out on email. And my gym became the most talked about company in the entire town. I ended up getting like an award the following year after this happened, but it was just an incredible amount of buzz came to my business based on this sweepstakes that we ran. And the biggest reason why was because one of the people that we picked ended up doing so well and being so successful that all of a sudden people started coming out of the woodwork saying, hey, I want the program. The woman's name is Kathy. And she was like an unbelievable person, but just did really, really well. And they're like, hey, well, I saw what Kathy did online, so I want to, run that program too. And it was the way we structured the documentary, it created this huge buzz. But what happens is lots of people will apply to win, right? Because they've seen people, do well and they want to win this. And you can only pick, a small number of winners. We picked 4. Sometimes people only pick 1, but you'll have a lot of people that won't win. And where this becomes a business generating tool is that the people that don't win, you would follow up with them and basically say, hey, unfortunately you weren't selected. Would you like to try a free trial? And we would give like a week free trial. And we never felt bad about doing it because we were like giving them something for free. They didn't win the whole thing, but they won something. And it still is something that we use today. And still every time we use it, it works really, really well. And it's probably something that you may want to add to your marketing play. We'd only do it like once or twice a year because it tends to lose its luster if you do it too much. But heck, if you want a game-changing marketing idea this year, the sweepstakes is one of them. And the cool thing is, I just recently launched a new program called New Client Academy. And New Client Academy is basically my program for gym owners to help them with their marketing. And I have lots of people in there that can help you. I have people that have ran this program before. I have tools and resources that help run a sweepstakes, and I can even get you on the phone with one of our coaches that can help you implement it. So if you're interested and you want to join us, it's newclientacademy.com. If you just go to newclientacademy.com, you can do a 60-day trial and get started with us and get all the info on this sweepstakes program that could be a game-changing idea. In terms of growth rate, when we ran the sweepstakes, it was the highest growth rate percentage that we've ever had in the history of our company. And we had some pretty good years leading up to that. So this is a definite game-changing idea. If you're looking for help implementing it, I can help you at newclientacademy.com. Peace.
Welcome to Namli's Maximizing the Member Experience segment. My name is Sumit Seth, and I'm the co-founder of Namli. This is part 2 of a 3-part series where we are breaking down the different components that go into staging that memorable experience. So in part 1, we spoke about the importance of having a well-designed theme to captivate your customer. For part 2, we're going to break down another essential component that I promise most of you are already very familiar with and are even practicing today in your gyms. Tell me if this sounds familiar. Tuck in your tailbone, pinch your shoulder blades, squeeze your butt. So those statements that you use are actually designed to signal to your clients to act in a certain way and give you a specific desired response. And these hints or signals are called cues. And that is the key component that we will unpack today. Now, there are 2 types of cues, positive and negative. Positive ones, as the name suggests, further supports the well-designed theme and creates that desired impression, which leads to that experience that we're talking about. Think of visual cues. Think cleanliness, equipment organization, neatness, color, lights. Think about oral cues, such as music, your tone, use of the person's name. And just like that, you have negative cues as well. And as the name suggests, negative cues are the ones that diminish, contradict, or distract your customers from the theme. So some negative cues, as an example, could be coaches using personal phones on the floor, bad smell. We've all dealt with body odor. Proper representing clothing worn by coaches, too, is another negative cue that could be a bit put off. So how do you create these cues, both positive and remove the negative, outside of just using them for coaching? Pretty simple, if you ask me. And the answer is, drum rolls, please. Ask your current members. Ask your friends. Ask your mentors. Ask your family. Ask anyone and everyone that you trust and admire who have been to your gym to give you an honest feedback. I would say ask your interns to give you their honest take. If there's ever a time to truly live the age-old idiom of put yourself in their shoes, this is that time. Trace the client's journey. See what all and who all they come in contact with. How do they interact with those pieces, be it in digital format or in person? And then see how you can build those positive cues and reduce and minimize the negative ones to be truly congruent to the impression you want to create. Do these steps, and you're well on your way to creating that amazing impression that in turn will help with sales, retention, and build you that profitable business. It's really that simple, trust me. Simple, but not easy. All right then, my name is Sumit Seth, co-founder of Namli. For more info, please check out namli.com. You can schedule a demo to get a feel for what it's all about and how we can help in creating that consistent, desirable impression in your members' mind so you could create that profitable business. Use the referral code StrengthCoach to get started on a true free 30-day trial.
Hey everyone, welcome to Getting Started with VBT or Velocity-Based Training, brought to you by Perch. Perch is a 3D camera-based weight room technology solution bringing VBT into the 21st century. I am Nico Ouellette, and I'm the head of marketing and education for Perch. And in this series on the Strength Coach podcast, we cover all things related to VBT. This one is going to be our last segment for a while, so we wanted to walk through what the future landscape looks like for velocity-based training. To look forward, let's briefly look back. Now, weightlifters have been lifting with a speed in their head, either fast reps or grinding reps, etc., for decades. The Soviets popularized what would become modern-day velocity-based training in the 1980s as a training methodology. Louis Simmons brought it to the United States and popularized it via the Tendo units shortly thereafter. And since then, VBT has been growing in popularity in research and in training methodology to where we are today. Now you can measure velocity using linear position transducers, accelerometers, and even camera-based systems like Perch. Research is telling us that there are smarter ways to train than ever before to eke out athletic performance. We got heart rate, nutrition, GPS, force plates, and the like, and they are getting ever more precise as we continue to develop the technology. Weight rooms are getting smarter. Sports science is a burgeoning field, and soon we'll have smart weight racks, tech that's integrated without being invasive, and even better performances on the field of play than ever. Weight room technology and velocity-based training are still in their very, very infancy, and we're really excited to see where they all go and grow from here. We think that they'll ultimately help coaches and athletes perform at their very best. Now, obviously, coaches will always be required to coach, but the tools that help them are only going to get better from here. We're really excited about the landscape of VBT, and we're really excited to be on this journey with you all. So feel free to reach out. That's all for now. Thanks for listening. And if you have any more questions about VBT or want more information and special deals, head to perch.fit/strengthcoach. That is perch.fit/strengthcoach. Thank you.
All right, now it's time for the Hit the Gym with the Strength Coach segment, brought to you by Athletic Greens. 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens. I use it every day. It will fill in the gaps for your nutrition. They're going to give you free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. I highly recommend getting the subscription because if you do, you get 20% off. And you can cancel or skip at any time. So you could do like 30 days, 45 days. You can skip it altogether. Go to athleticgreens.com/strengthcoach to get that offer. All right, today I have on Megan Pomarensky, and she is a certified athletic therapist, certified functional strength coach. That's how I know her, really, through the boys. She's a certified vinyasa yoga instructor with a master's degree in rehabilitation science. She's probably been busy, sounds like, for the last couple of years doing some education. She is an internationally published academic author, public speaker, and educator. And over the past 9 years, she's built a successful private clinical practice working with clients from professional athletes looking to improve performance to older adults with chronic pain and everyone in between. Her mission is to empower every client to better understand their body, get the most efficient and effective rehab and training. We're going to talk a lot about that today, and make informed decisions about their care and break the chronic pain cycle. Megan, thanks for doing this.
Hello, thanks so much for having me.
All right. Well, I was listening. Like I said, I feel like it's weird because I wasn't really paying attention. The boys have been featuring you. You were on the Movement as Medicine podcast, and you have articles on strengthcoach.com. So my listeners who are members at Strength Coach probably are very familiar with you. So love your stuff because it's kind of going against the grain a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of the way we've been doing things. And I told you we had Dr. Brian Yee on here a couple months back, and it was great because very similar, talking about the biopsychosocial approach, going a little bit deeper, looking at things and thinking about the language that we use. And I love the direction that you're going. And I want you to start out with this idea of the biomedical model versus the biopsychosocial model, which can be very hard to say when you're looking at that word. But we'll talk about that and behavior change and how it influences outcomes. And I know it's a lot, but I want you to expand on what you said about chronic pain, because you said there's no biomedical or biomechanical factor leading to pain. So once you define those, we can get into that idea about those factors, but take it away.
Absolutely. I know it's a loaded conversation sometimes when we get into this. And I think a big part of that is because the biological model is so ingrained in us from day one. Like that's the medical model that dates back for decades and decades and decades, where we're taught that something is wrong. There's a very specific biological cause or biomechanical cause or pathological cause. And as soon as you correct that, pain is going to be gone. The person is healed, or the injury or disease is healed, and then we're good to go. And what all the research has shown over the past years that just hasn't quite made its way mainstream as much yet is that there's a whole other world of factors out there, like the psychological factors and the sociological factors that are influencing the pain, oftentimes more than those biological factors are, when we're talking about pain that's been around for what they define as chronic pain as being 3 months or 6 months or more.
So I think it plays into this idea of, and I'm going to start this early. I wasn't even planning on this question yet, but this idea of like, what's wrong in physical therapy? Because what happens is they get this image and then they get told something by the doctor, who, not all doctors, but don't have a lot of knowledge about movement, they don't take into account some of these psychosocial approaches or behavior changes. And so I think a lot of people, like my in-laws and my wife included, they don't believe in physical therapy. And I had my father-in-law, and I think I talked about this on the Brian Yee episode, is my father-in-law, I'm sure he had a replacement of his hip replacement, recently in October. And I was like, listen, I know you don't believe in it, but you got to go to physical therapy. I had my knee replaced. I'm 55, in great shape. And last year I had a knee surgery, just nothing crazy, meniscus. But the next day I was doing single leg squats on my left with my crutches, single leg squats, a bench press, and a one arm row, and a single leg deadlift on the unaffected leg. And I worked out every day because the doctor wouldn't let me go to physical therapy right away because I believe in it so much. And then I did 4 weeks of physical therapy. So, and that's me. He's at 88 and he's like, I don't need to go to physical therapy. 20 years ago, I did it all on my own, because he doesn't believe in it. Can you talk about this idea about all these things coming together? It's why I think people don't believe in it, or believe it works.
Yeah. I see that a lot in my practice too, where clients have tried so hard for so long to deal with something on their own because they think it's going to just magically get better sometimes, because that's the way we used to do things, and tough it out, be strong, do all of those things. And I think physical therapy has gotten a little bit of a bad reputation in some senses too, where it's turned very passive, and oftentimes people are put on machines or using modalities, and the exercise has gotten forgotten about because all we're dealing with is that exact symptom. And to be fair, people can often deal with the symptoms on their own at home, use your ice pack, use heat or whatever it is. So there's a disconnect then. It's like, well, why do I need to go to therapy? And it's like, well, it's because of the gradual progressive loading and exercise is why it's helpful, as well as dealing with all of the other side of things. Because when you get hurt, when you go through surgery, when you have any sort of pain, it's it's rarely just physical. There's going to be psychological components where maybe there's fear, there's apprehension, there's uncertainty about what to do. And all of that drives our behavior and whether we choose to participate in activities or not. And then there's the social influences that impact it as well, where maybe we have to go to work, so we don't have time to go to physiotherapy or something like that, or we don't have the time because of childcare issues or life and all of these other things that just takes priority over it. And some people have to make those choices. And if you don't see the direct benefit of physical therapy, you're not going to go, right?
Yeah, and I think it's hard to get people to believe. Like we had
Yeah.
Mike Stella on here, and he was talking about he had a product that he called the end of the ice age, right? So why icing is hurting people and why, because that
Yeah.
process needs to happen naturally, et cetera. And I think people don't believe you hit the nail on the head there. You were saying that they don't understand it's the gradual piece of loading because the loading seems to be loading is misunderstood in that healing process, wouldn't you say?
100% it is. And some of that comes, I think, again, from what we used to do and the way physicians and other people talk about things. It's like, oh, you're hurt, something is painful, you have to rest, because we're automatically equating. And this goes into that biomedical model where hurt equals harm. So therefore, we need to rest and not load things, when that's really not the case at all. It's very, very safe in most situations to load something, even if it's isometrically or even if it's the joints above and below or agonist-antagonist situation. We can often make good influences by adding load onto an injury or an injured area.
Yeah. Can you I kind of mentioned it in that first question, but expand on that idea about chronic pain and that there's no biomedical or biomechanical factor leading to pain? Because when I first hear that, I'm like, what are you talking about? Like there's, if I have a hurt right ankle, then I'm going to be limping a little bit, right? In the beginning, I might limp. And then after a while, I'm moving poorly and it's going to affect my left side of my lower back or my left knee or something. So can you expand on that? Because you talk about it's hypersensitivity of the nervous system, decreased thresholds, and deconditioning and or fear. Can you kind of just give us an idea about how you could say that really there's no biomechanical factor leading to that pain?
Yeah. So oftentimes when we hit that 3-month point, sometimes it's a little bit longer, again, just depending on the injury or pathology. The tissue that was injured or damaged, traumatically, compensatory, surgically, whatever that trauma was, is going to be healed from a physiological healing standpoint. The muscle strain is healed from the whiplash within 4 to 8 weeks. A broken bone is going to be healed around 6 to 8 weeks. So that is not what's driving the pain anymore. It's not going to be that nociception from the damaged nerve fibers and inflammatory response and that side of it. What's going to be driving the pain is most likely going to be the nervous system, because when you're hurt and experience injury or pain, or your body thinks you're even going to get injured because of a position maybe you were previously hurt in, it's going to start to ramp up and put you into that sympathetic fight or flight state. That's going to ramp up the cortisol in your body. That's going to amplify the sensitivity of the nerve fibers. So your threshold for what you're previously been capable of tolerating starts to drop down. And then the other side that parallels that is the deconditioning, because when we're in chronic pain, most of the time people have been told to rest, don't do something if it hurts, or be careful and don't load it. And we have these beliefs about it that often people withdraw from activities. So then they're less active in the rest of their body. So their body becomes deconditioned, and the more deconditioned you are, the weaker you are, the stiffer you are, the less mobile. So then when you go put yourself in that position to go move and do something, it's going to hurt because you haven't done it for so long. And then you can even go down the road of the aerobic system and how that plays a role, and inflammation plays a role, and that whole side of it too.
Yeah, I one of the things that I kept saying to my father-in-law was, okay, if you're not going to go to physical therapy, then can you get on that bike?
Yeah.
Right. And just start to move. Because I was hoping once he started to move, things start happening. Like you said, there's other things going on that are going to help that piece of it. So when he started doing that, he started feeling better eventually. And now he's going to physical therapy because
Amazing.
I said, can you just do me a favor? Can you just give them 4 chances? Because he'll give them 1 chance and be like, oh, it was horrible. It didn't work. I'm like, what are you talking about? It's 1 time. So, but he really liked the people. And so he started feeling better because of the bike. And so then when he went to physical therapy, and he almost didn't go because he was feeling better on the bike and he felt like he could do it on his own. So he just went, and now he's like, okay, he's good. I'm going to go 6 times. So I was like, all right, cool. And I know he's going to, it's going to help him. And the physical therapy is going to certainly even, exponentially start to help him because he's going to be moving more. It's just, it's snowballs. It's snowballs. So it's almost like there's a language piece of it too, or a buy-in sometimes. And I was telling you earlier, Clifton Hersky had a picture on Instagram of a trainer doing an overhead squat assessment. And he said, I like where he was going with it, but I don't love it. Trainers don't listen to client goals for shit. Then we try to show them how pathetic they are and wonder why we suck at signing them up. Now, I understand where he's coming from, and he's right in a lot of ways. But I like what you talked about in one of your articles. Instead of looking at all the things that are wrong, so you do your assessment, start looking at the things that are right. And then when we tell them what we're doing, because when we tell them what we're doing wrong, then it could lead to fear guarding and further deconditioning, exactly what we kind of felt like earlier. So talk about this idea about how you approach that with somebody when they come in and how you kind of get them to buy in and get them to start moving a little bit more.
Yeah, so the buy-in, I think, is the key. And that's so great with your father-in-law that he found that, because you have to show somebody success in order to get them to buy into, especially to physical therapy. If they go in one time and they don't see some sort of improvement, whether it's symptoms or range of motion or anything, they're going to just automatically be like, well, what am I spending all this money for? What's going on? And you also mentioned the relationship, and he likes the people. And that is so key as well when it comes to outcomes, is that therapeutic relationship. So it sounds like he's going to be set for a very long, good time, which is amazing. And when it comes to the buy-in, it is the result initially, and it's also showing people what they're capable of doing, because again, chronic pain, especially, or people who have been injured in the past, there's often fear and nervousness and apprehension going on because they're scared of what could potentially happen again because they've experienced it, or because somebody planted the seed that they're weak or damaged, or they have all these things that are wrong with them. And it's like, oh my gosh, if your knee collapses in a little bit, you're going to blow your ACL automatically. And yes, that is a potential risk factor, but the way we word it plays a big role in how the client interprets it. And some of that comes down to, I think, us as therapists and coaches. We see this stuff all the time, and it's normal for us, and we expect to see these types of things. Whereas for a client, they often don't know any better, right? Like when we talk about a knowledge scale, we're at that 7, 8, 9, 10. Majority of our clients are at like a 2 out of 10 in what they know about biomechanics and movement and exercise. So if you pick on the fact that their knee caved in a little bit, or their shoulder rounded forward too much, oftentimes they're going to start to obsess over that. And then that's going to cause all these other problems of them being scared to do things or modifying the way they do things and having these compensations. And when we talk about biomechanical factors not always being relevant, that plays a role. And we're talking about things like shoulder impingement or FAI and those types of conditions where there's very poor correlation between the special tests that we do to create these diagnoses of, there's not enough internal rotation, or there's too much rotation, or whatever it is. Those aren't correlated with patient symptoms and with what we see on imaging results all the time. So we have to be careful about how we word things, because then these clients are going to have this idea of like, oh my God, something is seriously wrong and I shouldn't do something. When really, general exercise is most of the time just as good as physical therapy when it comes for dealing with a shoulder impingement, or when it comes to dealing with a rotator cuff tear. We don't have to do all these fancy corrective exercises to get the result that we want. So why do we have to put that seed in the client's mind? If the goal is just to get them exercise and gradually load them into the positions that we want, we can do that without all this fancy language and picking apart everything that they do and making them, in a way, feel bad about themselves. Because they're showing up to the gym, they're showing up to the clinic, wanting to exercise, wanting to get better. And then here I am standing with my clipboard narrating all of these things that are supposedly wrong with them. That's going to feel terrible for everybody. And I've been on that side of it as the client, and it made me so scared to do anything in the gym after I had hip surgery. Because I was scared I was going to ruin the repair that was done in my hip because somebody was like, oh my God, you're squatting like an inch too deep and your pelvis tucked under like 10 degrees too early. And it's like, well, I don't know how to deal with that. So instead of showing me how to deal with that, they just told me what I was doing wrong. And I was like, that is not helpful. And it was scary and made me withdraw from the gym. And I developed all sorts of fears about this. And the other story is that's why I ended up doing my master's in this type of stuff to understand it more.
Yeah, and it's funny because I first heard that from Charlie Weingroff years ago, saying, stop focusing on what you can't do. So I couldn't do right leg, single leg squats. Focus on what you can do. And when you want to talk about a snowball effect, when you start doing that, and I got surgery on a Wednesday and Thursday, I'm doing this little workout. I filmed it. And I showed everybody what I was doing to hopefully inspire some people to say, look, you can do this stuff. You can do something. And there's obviously evidence to prove through transference that, when you're doing something on the left leg, it's going to help the right leg. Okay, it might be minor, but it's something. And there's so many other good things that are happening when we're doing it. But I love, though, you also gave a great example. Like, you don't have to throw out those corrective exercises. It's just really the way you approach them. And one of the things you said, focus on language, external cueing. Could you go over how you would say, like, okay, I just did this assessment. Squat looks horrible. This looks horrible. I need to work on those. Okay. But I'm not going to tell them. We're going to work on give them some positive stuff, but I'm also going to try to fix those things. So how do you do that?
Yes. So when it comes to training any exercise that I think doesn't quite meet the criteria of what it should be, the first thing I'm looking at is it still effective and is it safe? And if it is, then I'm going to train some variation of it and then make these modifications to get the result that I want, which is probably going to be that more, technically proficient biomechanical ideal version of the exercise. And that's going to look like putting the client in a position where their body's going to react to do the thing that we want it to do. So in a plank or a bear crawl or something like that, for example, if their pelvis is dropping side to side a lot, it's pretty useless for me to just stand there and yell, don't let your hip drops, because they don't know what that means. There's no connection for them. Like, again, that's why they're here being trained or rehabbing with me. So instead of telling them, don't let your hip drop, or do you feel how your hip's dropping so much? Don't let that happen. I'm going to put a yoga block on their back or balance the massage stick or something and tell them not to let it fall. And then as soon as they start to feel that shifting and, oh, it's going to slide, they're going to automatically be able to correct it and then remember what that feels like. And then wean them away from that, where the next set we take it off and it's like, imagine that's still there and you're balancing it and work on it that way. Or, if it's the squat caving in or the step ups and their knees are collapsing in more than I would like, we'll put the band around their knees. And instead of saying, don't let your knees cave in, push out into the band. And then they're so focused on pushing out into the band, their knees can't cave in because they're consciously thinking about it, activating the muscles that need to activate to make it happen. And then we're starting that motor control and motor learning process to get that result independently on their own. And subsequent to that too, there's the idea of your body and your brain can really only focus on certain things. And if you're constantly telling somebody what not to focus on, your reticular activating system is going to keep looking for that. So if I keep telling you, don't collapse your back and don't let your spine round forward, all your brain hears is your spine's rounding forward. It doesn't really comprehend the don't part of it. So then we become so focused on that. So again, tell them what to do, which is maybe it's, show off the logo on your shirt. I think I got that one from Eric Cressy. When deadlifting, instead of squeeze your shoulder blades back, show off the logo on your shirt, and you're automatically going to get that chest opening shoulder back position. And then you take away that negation and your brain can do what it wants to do and learn.
Love it. I feel like, we talk a lot about language, what we say, but it's also what we don't say. Right.
Mm-hmm.
As well. So it's super important. You wrote an article called Stop Worrying and Start Living. And I think, like I said to you, a lot of the things that I was reading about you and listening to you, they all kind of tie in together. And
Yep.
this kind of goes with it. This idea of wear and repair. We've all heard of wear and tear, but you said the opposite is true. And the body, we talked a little earlier, the body repairs itself with movement. Can you expand on this and what you mean by wear and repair? And does that mean, hey, if I had a meniscus tear, should I just go start walking and loading it, or just talk to us about wear and repair?
Yeah, this idea comes a lot from Professor Stanton in osteoarthritis and pain research and Craig Levinson. And they often talk about, and have taught me, that wear and tear is something that, again, it's the language that's fearful. People hear that where, their joint is worn out because they've done too much. They're going to stop exercising. They're going to stop the movement, like never squat again or never flex your ankle because it's arthritic. And then we start to lose more range of motion and start to lose more strength because we're doing less, all because we think it's being worn out. When really, load in safe, progressive, gradual capacities can help improve joint health because we're getting better joint fluid moving around. We're getting cushioning. Your body's going to start to put down better quality cartilage and bone tissue because it only responds to the stimulus you put into it. So if we do nothing, your body's going to stop laying down the tissue that it needs for good quality, healthy cartilage. So we want to keep moving and we want to keep doing things. And there's a lot of really cool research that has come out that supports all of this when we talk about how ultra marathon athletes, for example, and professional athletes, because of their high levels of training, they often have thicker cartilage. And, we've seen the opposite where astronauts come back from space where there's no gravity and no load, and they're the ones who have thinner cartilage in their knee joints compared to the others. So it just goes to show that load in safe manners is helpful, and it's going to help repair in the sense of lay down better tissue quality, minimize joint damage, minimize other problems that can come from that. And most of the time, exercise is going to be safe if you've ruled out the big bad pathological red flags.
Yeah. Can we repair cartilage? I mean, I think I've always heard in the past, like, it's just something that can't be repaired. Can we repair it through these things? Can it regrow? That type of stuff.
Yeah, your body can start to produce more of the cells that produce cartilage. It's different in the sense of like meniscus tears and that form of cartilage compared to articular cartilage. Like meniscus tears, they don't really get their own blood flow. They don't do a lot. They're often manageable conservatively most of the time, unless there's a flap tear, bucket handle, or something like that that's actually catching and locking. But the degenerative type tears, where it's just time that's caused that, is often going to be irrelevant to pain. Okay. And you can work around that and train it. And the exercise component of it, the stronger your muscles are, the less joint pressure there's going to be as well, because the muscles are stabilizing the joint better, so we don't get as much compression of the joints.
Yeah, and I think another thing people really don't understand or are afraid of is when I'd gotten the MRI in May. And so first I said, well, I don't want surgery right now because I want to, what can I do first? Mm-hmm. I'm like, I've been riding the bike. He's like, oh yeah, ride the bike every day. You can. So I did, straight leg raises and Spanish squats where my, tibia was straight and bike. I went at that surgery in really good shape, not only from riding my regular bike, but even the Airdyne. I was doing a lot of interval training, trying to get really stronger. And I went into the surgery really strong. And I think it's another thing people mistake is going into that. You could prepare for that because a lot of times you're not really going to make it much worse, depending on what it is, right?
Yeah, absolutely. For most situations, there's going to be a lot of things you can still do
Yeah.
unless it's been very, very traumatic and there's some, gross instability
Yeah.
or something like that, or risk of other medical conditions developing because of it. And the stronger you get before any sort of surgery, the better, whether it's for the joint itself or the rest of it. Like when I was preparing for my surgery, and what I do for my clients now too, is make sure your upper body's strong, because you don't know how long you're going to be on crutches, right? Like just because it's an ankle or knee or hip surgery, you're going to have to change the way you do things. Maybe you're going to have to use a wheelchair for a little bit potentially. So you're going to want that upper body strength. You're going to want that core strength. So train for that, and you'll get all the secondary effects from transference and from just generally working the cardiovascular and muscular systems that way.
Yeah, I know. I've worked with a bunch of clients, both pre-surgery
Yeah.
through my whole career. And it's one of the things that I think helped differentiate me as well, is I was always like, hey, okay, wow, we need to train harder now. We need to do this, this, and that to prepare you for, and, obviously with the doctor or their physical therapist, like, hey, can we do this? Can we do that? Yeah, you're not going to hurt it. You're not going to hurt it good. Yeah, let's get them in the best shape we can. So I think it's important because, we have a lot of trainers on here, obviously not athletic therapists or physical therapists, but there is stuff we can do as trainers still. So it's good stuff.
100%.
Now, let's talk about, in that article, you talked about injury prevention, or what you like to call injury mitigation. And I think you're preaching to the choir when you say, so when we talk about strength training, this means challenge, not struggle, gradual, progressive overload, law of specificity, doing what you need to do in real life in training. But here's where I need you to kind of expand on, because we know people take like a soundbite and they run with it. They need to train in vulnerable positions. So if you've never gone there in training, tissue quality will be less than ideal. Your body does not know how to pull in and out of those positions or accept load. The best way to mitigate injury, train it before it happens. So now I read the rest of the article. I know you have a gradual approach, but people will read this and be like, it's very similar. I think it's why the boys don't love the knees over toes stuff, right? I think there's a lot of great stuff about it. Don't get me wrong. But it's like, no, that's not what you do first. Stop. Go. You're getting a little crazy here. There's certain things we have to get into it. But to me, it's a similar thing. You're saying train in vulnerable positions. This could be taken the wrong way. So can you expand on what you mean by this?
Absolutely. I completely agree that it often gets blown out of proportion and taken into different contexts. And really what I mean by this is gradually progressing yourself into positions that your sport or your job or your life is going to put you in. And the reason that that's important is because we know, based on science, that injury is going to happen when load exceeds the capacity of a tissue, whether that's muscle or bone, anything. If too much load is imparted on that structure, injury is going to happen. So if we truly want to prevent injury, we have to think about training as improving overall capacity of the tissues. So strength training is generally going to be the answer for that. When it comes to the vulnerable position parts of it, this is something that I see a lot in my rehab practice as opposed to my training practice, where people will come in and with an injury because, they slipped going down the stairs and they reached and grabbed for the arm handle or railing and strained their shoulder, strained their pec muscle, because they've never trained with their arm at end range flexion or into cross flexion or anything like that, or it's common here right now in Winnipeg with the icy roads, your leg slips out from under you, your hamstring might strain because you've never experienced that range of flexibility before. So the load exceeded the capacity of what it was able to handle. So when we're coming back from an injury, we don't just want to take you back to baseline, which is that neutral position. We want to gradually get you beyond that. So the key is to start in neutral and then expand out slowly from there. And one of the most straightforward ways to do this is through use of like high intensity isometrics, and the FRC guys do a great job of this. and taking you into different angles of those positions, whether it's the amount of flexion that you have, or whether it's the amount of rounding of your back that you have, or extension of your back, or whatever hip position it is. If we start to just do even isometrics, just higher intensity, start to create that stimulus, we're going to start to improve the tissue quality there. So then when the accident happens, because let's be real, accidents are going to happen if you're not bubble wrapped all the time, your body can hopefully deal with it a little bit better. That's the premise of it. It's not saying like, let's go start doing Jefferson curls with 200 pounds.
Yeah.
If you've never flexed your spine before, let's start by maybe just flexing your spine against gravity. So let's start doing some cat cows. Let's start doing, curl ups, those sort of things, and start to just introduce that to your body so that then when you're at home, you have to pick something up off the floor. We don't have to necessarily use a hip hinge, because that's great to do when you have an acute back injury. You shouldn't have to think about living your life like that, though. So let's gradually expose you to that flexion over time. And once we've ruled out all the big bad things that could potentially happen.
Yeah. And then obviously the FRC guys, Dr. Spina will always talk about, look, there's no bad exercises, because if you're trained, if you say, well, what is your goal? So if you need to get into this position, right? And he's worked with a lot of fighters originally too. That's his big thing. So they're in all, and, Dewey Nielsen is that's his background as well. So they're starting out in these positions, of where they want to go and doing those isometrics. So can you just, for the people that don't know, what is a high intensity isometric?
So the intensity is the amount of effort that you're going to be putting into it. So whether you're, using your hand to block that movement, or a weight or something else, you're creating tension within your body, within those muscles around that joint, and holding it for an extended period of time and ramping that up over time. So first, it might only be 10 or 20% of what you're capable of, because that tissue hasn't contracted in that end range position before, or vulnerable position, whatever phrase you want to use. And then we slowly increase the intensity till it's at your maximum that you're comfortable doing. And then we hold that for upwards of sometimes a couple minutes to create whatever stimulus and adaptation we're going for. And then that intensity is what's going to drive the strength gain.
Awesome. I think it's a good segue into your article, Feeling Tight versus Being Tight. And because a lot of times when we get these clients, because 99.9% of the people that come in are saying, I'm a little tight, I'm feeling tight. What is the difference between feeling tight and being tight? And when you're feeling tight, what can we do?
This is one of my favorite topics to talk about, because it was the bane of my existence in clinic for so long. Because like you said, everybody feels tight all the time. They're like, oh, I have to stretch for hours, or I need to foam roll all the time in order to feel loose. And, I'm stretching and stretching and stretching, but I still can't touch my toes, or I still can't reach behind my back, or whatever it is. And that's because they feel this perception of tightness, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the mechanical soft tissue is shortened. So when something is mechanically tight, there's actual shortening of the muscle fibers. So passive range of motion is going to be restricted. And that could be because of, tissue fibrosis, disuse atrophy, fatty infiltration, any or all of those things. There's going to be a true physical limitation. So even if I try to move their joint for them, we're not getting anywhere. And that's true tightness. And that's where a true mechanical intervention like stretching can help, because we're imparting this lengthening load over time. We're going to start to create those adaptations and lengthen that muscle tissue. When feeling tight can be for numerous other reasons. It can be because there's spasm in the muscle. It can be because there's this low-grade contraction or hypertonicity where there's just increased tone in the muscle. And that can be because your nervous system is guarding it. that joint, that position, that range, whatever it is, because maybe you've been injured before. Maybe there's pain in the area. Maybe you're dehydrated. It could be a lot of different factors. But if it's this low grade tone that's coming from a nervous system input, you can't stretch your way out of that effectively. It's going to feel good in the moment to do a stretch because you're changing the perception of what your body feels, but we don't see that long-term lasting effect. So if that's the case, that's where we have to start looking at other interventions, like going down the road of the joint by joint approach maybe, and figuring out, is this protective tightness because something else somewhere is weak? Is it because something else is overcompensating? Is it a postural thing? Is it because it's just a fear-based movement that our body's just all of a sudden tightening up and protecting it? And then we can address each of those things with the appropriate intervention, like graded exposure, graded activity, just general strength training, or that sort of thing.
Absolutely. And I think what a lot of people miss too is, and you talked about it in the article, was you can do all that stuff, but it's probably not going to work unless you're following the activity with this idea about actively using and utilizing that newly acquired range of motion. So is your sequence kind of like, okay, whatever, let's say foam roll the area, then stretch it, get into some of those different ranges of motion, and then go and utilize it in an exercise?
Yeah, exactly. So I will follow any sort of mobility or flexibility exercise with some sort of strength thing. So if we were really targeting the hamstrings, maybe we foam rolled, we stretched if it was appropriate, or did some hip exercises to let the hamstrings let go, like a Cook hip lift or something like that. Then I see that their straight leg raise improved passively and actively. Then we'll start deadlifting or doing a single leg deadlift or something like that, where we're starting to use the muscles in that new range of motion so that your body realizes, first of all, like, hey, this is okay. It's safe. We're not getting hurt. So it'll open that range for you in that sense. And because you'll take away that threat and sensitization aspect. And then it also falls back into the principle of training what was previously vulnerable or what was previously deconditioned. Because if it's been tight for so long or you've avoided it for so long, it comes back down to tissue quality. Let's make it stronger. The way we're going to do that is by strength training.
Yeah. It's funny because going back to kind of my stuff, just because I kind of hit a lot of these concepts in my own rehab, et cetera. And I went to my trainer, Bryce Taylor, and we were talking about how, look, I'm a trainer. I'm knowledgeable. I'm talking to all these people, these great people, but still there's going to be stuff in my head that, for me, what happened was what I was saying to Bryce was he was the one who, like, because I trusted him, right? That's a huge part. And he gave me permission, quote unquote, to load it, to go in the, I'm like, oh, I can do that. I can do, he was taking my, knee and moving it into certain range. I'm like, whoa, we're allowed to do that. And he's, yeah, you're not going to hurt it here. So I think that's a huge piece of our role, even if we're not therapists, to get people to understand, okay, we can try this, go gradual. It's okay. Because you are supposed to be a trusted resource, no matter, if you're not a doctor or, we're trainers, we're still trusted resources, and we have to get that buy-in, and we can get people to do some things that, within reason, that are going to help them move forward and clear their head of that fear. Because you mention fear, I don't know how many times, right? It's crazy. Let's finish up on this art of accountability. I've never heard anybody say this, although I get the concept. It might be a bit extreme ownership, but you said non-compliance is not a thing. If a client isn't following through in a program, it's your fault. It's not the client's fault. It's your fault. So you seem pretty, you're blaming me for this, but so if my client eats a bag of Doritos when they get out of the session, I'm sorry, it's not my fault. Talk to us about this idea of accountability and how we can make sure that we're we're helping people become accountable.
Yeah, I admit I came in hot with that one. The thing with accountability and compliance is we're in the game of behavior change, right? And most of the time, in order to change a behavior, we need to understand why that new behavior is going to serve us better. So that's our number one job, in my opinion, as the coach or as a therapist, is to help the client see and then make the choice for themselves, whether they want to follow through with that behavior change or not. And what often happens with training programs that we make or nutrition programs or rehab programs is it's a lot of our goal as the therapist or the coach. And we haven't necessarily taken into account the client's lifestyle and where they're at on that readiness of being willing to change scale either, right? Because in order to make a change, somebody needs to be ready, willing, and able to change. And if we have fully taken that into account and we've fully understood their current situation, we can make a program that they're going to enjoy and that they're going to be accountable to and that they're going to comply with. Because if they're not complying with it, it's either we haven't done a good job of explaining why something is important to them or important to help them reach their goal. It's because we perhaps chose something that's not actually accessible to them. And it could, like, we could take this into the biopsychosocial realm pretty deeply in the sense of I'm telling you not to eat Doritos or I'm telling you to go for a walk every day. But what if that's all they can afford? Or what if it's not safe for them to go for a walk in their neighborhood or something like that, right? We have to consider those social factors and then the psychological factors of are they ready, willing, and able to change? And then has our program as a whole reflected all of that before we give it to them? Because, like I can write a really great strength program that can take somebody an hour. But if I didn't actually ask them, are you willing to do this for an hour? It's irrelevant. And then, of course, they're not going to complete it because they literally only have 20 minutes. That's not their fault. That's my fault because I didn't have a conversation.
Agreed.
And I'm in that position of authority where they might be scared to tell me I don't actually have time to do that, or they don't want to let me down. Like I know that was a big one with some of my clients in rehab. They would come to me apologizing and they're like, oh my God, Megan, I'm so sorry I didn't do the exercise because I didn't have time. And I'm like, you don't have to apologize to me. Like we didn't make it fit your lifestyle. Like I hope you're not scared to tell me that.
Yeah, they are.
It's that authority thing.
Yeah. They don't want to let you down. I just did a program for my 50 for 50 in July. I was like, hey, I need some people to test this out. Yeah. And I had like 8 to 10 people, friends on Facebook who, said, cool, I'll do it. And I said, okay, here's what you need to do. You need to make sure you follow the program. Can you commit to this? Can you do this? Can you do that? Will you write a testimonial? Yeah, great. I had like 3 or 4 of them basically end up ghosting me because they just couldn't get into it. They couldn't tell me and they told me hey, I'm so sorry. The kid's going to college and blah, blah, blah. And I had this, and then sent them a few more emails. Never heard from them again. These are people that I've known for a long time. So even for them, and I think you said it right, like too many times we talked about the Clifton Harsky quote earlier, his Instagram post, right? It's the same idea. Like we're just saying, hey, do this, and this is what you're bad at. But we're also put our goals on it. And I think that's why this idea about John Berardi used to say, when you have a goal, you have to find out who's the person you need to become to achieve that goal as well, because you might not be a person who can put in 20 minutes a day on a morning walk, or you're not somebody who can maybe, prepare your food or whatever. And that's where the whole motivational interviewing comes in, right? Like, hey, on a scale of 1 to 10, if I said you need to do an hour workout 3 days a week, how likely are you to do that? If they say 6, you need to fix something here. We need to say, okay, well, what about 45 minutes? 7. What about a half hour? I can do that. I think I can do that, right? And okay, that's where we're going to go. So I love where you were going with that. I think until we realize it is our fault, we need to do a better job with this stuff. We're not going to make any changes with our clients. We're not going to help them.
Exactly. It's always going to come back down to the conversation at the end of the day. And are we as the coach or therapist listening more than we're talking?
Yeah.
Because the client's going to give us all the information that we need if we ask questions, sit there and shut up and listen to what they have to say.
Love it. Yeah.
And that is very underrated from what I've seen.
It's absolutely underrated. It's hard to do sometimes, especially when somebody like me who likes to talk a lot. So
I get you.
Megan, thank you so much for coming on. I'm glad you reached out to me. This is awesome. It was great to kind of look at some of your articles and listen to you on the Movement is Medicine podcast. You're doing some great stuff. Keep up the good work. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
All right, that's going to do it for episode 350 of the Strength Coach podcast. Remember, you can try the new strengthcoach.com out 7 days for free. Totally new format, user-friendly, same great forum as always. To access the offer, the free 7-day trial, go to strengthcoach.com, click the Join Now button to get started. Special thanks to Chris Barry and the folks over at Perform Better. Remember, the holiday sale has been extended to January 3rd, up to 40% off racks, benches, bands, sandbags, cleaning supplies, so many items. Also, the one-day seminars are back starting on January 14th in Fair Lawn, New Jersey. They're also going to be in Austin, LA, Chicago, and Boston. Check it all out at performbetter.com. Thanks to Coach Boyle and Megan Pomarensky for sharing their insights and philosophies into the world of strength conditioning and performance enhancement and chronic pain. Check out the anniversary interview I did with Coach Boyle, 40 Mistakes, 40 Years. There is a link to access that at strengthcoachpodcast.com. Thanks to Sumi Seth and Namli, helping build relationships through personalized communication so your members stay longer and pay longer. Go to namli.com, use a referral code StrengthCoach to get started on your free 30-day trial. Thanks to Vince Gabriel and Kiss Marketing. If you need some help with your marketing, head over to kissmarketing.net to book a free coaching call with Will Matheson, Vince Gabriel's secret marketing weapon. Thanks to Nico Willette and Perch. Perch is a 3D camera-based weight room technology solution bringing VBT into the 21st century. Head over to perch.fit/strengthcoach to find out more about it. They have some great videos showing the cameras and how to use it. Thanks to Athletic Greens. Visit athleticgreens.com/strengthcoach to get your year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs today. My name's Anthony Arena. Check out the show notes at continuefit.com or strengthcoachpodcast.com. Thanks for listening to this episode, and thanks for listening this whole year. We're now on 15 years. I really appreciate you guys, and I'll speak to you next time.